الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So as we continue discussing the book Al-Arba'in Nawawi, where the author rahimahullah that he collected just over 40 hadith, and this collection is somewhat renowned and well known. So we'll be covering these ahadith, and today inshallah ta'ala we'll be continuing discussing these ahadith, and we'll be discussing hadith 28, hadith number 28 in this collection of An-Nawawi rahimahullah. So the hadith will be read, and then we go through the system that we normally follow regarding explaining and commenting on the hadith. So we'll read the hadith and then start the discussion around the hadith. Tafaddal.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Hadith number 28, the obligation of adhering to the Sunnah. عن أبي نجيح الإرباد بن سارية رضي الله تعالى عنه قال وعظنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم موعظة وجلت منها القلوب وذرفت منها العيون فقلنا يا رسول الله كأنها موعظة مودع فأوصنا قال أوصيكم بتقوى الله عز وجل والسمع والطاعة وإن تأمر عليكم عبد فإنه من يعش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بالسنة والسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين عدوا عليها بالنواجذ وإياكم ومحدثة الأمور فإن كل بدعة ضلالة رواه أبو داود والترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح. Translation. On the authority of Abu Najih al-Irbad ibn Sariyata radiallahu anhu, that he said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us a profound admonition that frightened the hearts and caused the eyes to shed tears. After which we said, O Messenger of Allah, it is as if it is a farewell admonition. So advise us. He said, I advise you with having fear of Allah, the Mighty, the Majestic, and hearing and obeying even if your ruler was a slave. For surely he who lives from amongst you will see much differing. So it is upon you to be upon my sunnah and the sunnah of the rightly guided khulafa. Bite onto it, i.e. the sunnah, with your back molar teeth, and beware of newly invented matters, for surely every innovation, bid'ah, is misguidance. Related by Abu Dawood, at-Tirmidhi, and he, at-Tirmidhi, stated, Hadith Hasan Sahih.
So that's the hadith that will be covered inshallah ta'ala. So as I mentioned, it's the hadith al-Thamin wal-Ishurun. This is the 28th hadith in this collection of An-Nawawi rahimahullah. So this hadith, based upon what was read, that they gave us a title of, what's the title of the hadith?
Obligation of adhering to the Sunnah.
Yes, that's the title of the hadith has been named. As I mentioned before, that An-Nawawi rahimahullah, the author, didn't per se title these hadith those who either worked on the hadith, did editing, or those who explain the hadith, that they may put a title to each of the hadith, depending on what they think the hadith is there to discuss as the mawdu', the topic of the hadith. So as for the system that we follow, that normally we discuss the hadith by way of takhrij, by discussing a takhrij of hadith regarding what have been said by the ulama pertaining to this particular hadith, whether they hold the hadith to be authentic or not. So discussing the aqwal of the ulama pertaining to the hukum upon this hadith, or the grading of the hadith. Then also this may include regarding looking at matters regarding the isnad, the chain of the hadith, and also looking at the matter which is the alfad of the hadith. And also we said that today we'll make some comparison regarding the wording of the hadith that is mentioned here and the actual sources that have mentioned this hadith. So he mentioned the hadith concerning the hadith that have been read. Rawahu Abu Dawood with Tirmidhi rahimahullah, and the Tirmidhi rahimahullah, all the hadith to be Hasan al-Sahih. So in going back to those sources that they mentioned, and so you mentioned, in Takhrij in brief, that Al-Busiri rahimahullah, when he mentioned this hadith, he stated regarding concerning added to what have been mentioned by An-Nawawi rahimahullah, قال Busiri, well, regarding this hadith, he mentioned Abu Sir rahimahullah mentioned قال والابن Majah, so the hadith from amongst kutub sitta. So he mentioned Abu Dawud with Tirmidhi, and also Abu Sir rahimahullah he added the hadith والابن Majah fi sunani. That hadith also is collected by Ibn Majah in his Sunan. So that's concerning. In brief, we'll discuss that further. But as far as we mentioned, the wording that has been mentioned, or the wording of the hadith as mentioned here, the wording of the hadith as mentioned here. So they mentioned that the hadith in the Abu Dawud. So as for Abu Dawud, go back into the book itself of Abu Dawud, that Abu Dawud rahimahullah, that he mentioned in the end of his book. So we mentioned Abu Dawud rahimahullah is a book of the Sunnah by way of Ahkam. So he mentioned mainly concerning Ahadith of Ahkam, but also the end of the book he mentioned matters regarding a Sunnah. So he can, which has, and also discuss matters, other matters. So he mentioned this particular topic, where he mentioned in the book where he titled this chapter Kitab as-Sunnah. So Abu Dawud rahimahullah, he mentioned this hadith under the title, the general title of the chapter of Kitab as-Sunnah, where he outlines certain matters of the Sunnah. And he mentions the sixth sub-heading where he titled Bab fi luzum as-Sunnah. Bab fi luzum as-Sunnah. Then he mentioned the hadith of and then he mentioned this particular hadith. So when he mentioned the hadith of the wording, we said let's stick to the wording that is mentioned here, that Abu Dawud rahimahullah, he mentioned قال إرباد صلى بنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم. So the hadith from the Irbad mentioned صلى بنا, that the Prophet Islam, that he prayed with us that particular day, and it will discuss. He didn't mention ذات اليوم, so he didn't mention which day and also which salat. ثم أقبل علينا, then the Prophet ﷺ, then he faced the people. Then he mentioned وعدنا موعدة بليغة. وعدنا, so he mentioned that وعدنا موعدة بليغة ذرفت منها العيون ووجلت منها القلوب. So somewhat in some narration of hadith, you'll find certain words that they change certain things around slightly, but the same meaning. They mention وعدنا موعدة بليغة. Then they mention فقال قائل. So someone asked, so someone who asks this question, يا رسول الله كأن هذه موعدة مودة فماذا تحد علينا. Then a person, someone asks that the Prophet said, this seems to be a farewell address. What do you kind of somewhat advise us concerning which thing that you want us to hold to? فقال أوصيكم بتقوى الله والسمع والطاعة وإن أبدا أبشيا. So it mentioned abd abashiyan. So the hadith that we have in front of us, it doesn't mention habashi. Nam. Then also it mentioned فإنه من يعيش منكم بعدي. So also it had concerning that من يعيش منكم بعدي فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء المهديين الراشدين. المهديين, so it mentioned السنة الخلفاء المهديين الراشدين. Now so a slight difference regarding, so it mentioned الراشدين, then it mentioned المهديين, then الراشدين. تمسكوا بها وعضوا عليها بالنواجد وإياكم ومحدثات الأمور فإن كل محدث بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. So that's concerning the wording of Abu Dawud. So you find that what is mentioned here, in most cases, that the hadith is mukhtasar. So what is mentioned by An-Nawawi rahimahullah, it's the narration which is mukhtasar. My man? Maybe if was he fed? Hey. Go. So that you find that also concerning that so that's Abu Dawud rahimahullah, where it said that his wording a bit slightly different by way of and now rahimahullah, he condensed or summarized the hadith. He didn't mention all the wording mentioned by Abu Dawud rahimahullah. Also again regarding At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, when he mentioned hadith, he called that he mentioned this bab in the Muslim Abwab al-Ilm and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he mentioned Abwab al-Ilm. And after he mentioned regarding concern, when he mentioned this hadith, Bab العقد بالسنة واجتناب البدع. عقد بالسنة واجتناب البدع. So he put this hadith under that title. That's At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah in his collection. So he mentioned this hadith. Abu Dawud mentioned hadith about three times in brief. At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, that when he mentioned the hadith, the wording concerning أوصيكم بتقوى الله. So his wording concerning that, وعد رسول الإسلام يوم الصلاة الغداء. So with At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, he can somewhat explain as to which salat that this maw'idah was mentioned. So he mentioned بعد صلاة الغداء, which is صلاة الصبح, which is after al-fajr salat. Then he mentioned موعظة بليغة ذرت منها العيون وجلت منها العيون أو قلوب فقال الرجل. So they mention in this case قال الرجل. And before it mentioned قال القائل. So from this hadith it shows that Irbad ibn Sariya was not maybe the one who asked this hadith, who asked for this advice. فقال إن هذه أموات المعدة. Then it mentioned أوصيكم بتقوى الله والسمع والطاعة وإن أبدأ حبشي فإنه من يعيش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا أو they mention إنه من يعيش منكم يرى. So they mention فسيرى. This one يرى اختلافا كثيرا. So you find slight difference in the wording. So you find most of the hadith and that be mentioned by others that you find a difference in the wording. And also you find Al-Hakim. So this hadith, what have been mentioned here, and you have others where the wording is not exactly the wording that is mentioned here. So if we will go through some of the sources, then you find that the wording that has been mentioned here by An-Nawawi rahimahullah is not exactly the wording mentioned in the original sources of Abu Dawud with Tirmidhi. Also even the same thing with Ibn Majah. You find that Al-Hakim also mentioned a hadith different wording, but you find that the wording is somewhat different. So there's sometimes regarding some of these with books of hadith that especially the latter scholars of latter time at times let us verify the exact wording, because sometimes like I say in this case that is a book that is encouraged to be memorized, but memorizing hadith, this wording said is somewhat a summary not of the original hadith. So it's a summary of the original hadith, not per se the exact wording that is found in the books of hadith. So it shows that regarding concerning at times that in the books of hadith, especially when a person said studying those books or wish to memorize those books, to kind of somewhat to cross-check the hadith with the original sources, because you want to memorize the hadith as it is mentioned in the original sources. So it's the important thing. So in several cases, we have gone through this procedure or this step of checking the hadith back to the original sources. I will find that at times what is mentioned in Al-Arba'in is a bit slightly different from what is mentioned in the original books. So also this shows regarding a person want to explain hadith of books that have been collected by, we said, more latter time scholars, then to somewhat just to cross-reference those hadiths. Just to cross-reference the hadith to ensure that the hadith that you have mentioned is actually the same as the original source. So it says now you find slight difference in the wording. This hadith, you said this, so the hadith here, it shows the hadith is muhtasar, that has been mentioned here. So the hadith, which is a summary with a slight change in the words or deletion of certain words in the hadith that have been mentioned here. The hadith is longer, that as mentioned by Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, at the beginning of the hadith you have certain wordings, like Ibn Majah rahimahullah in his version of the hadith. So Ibn Majah rahimahullah, when he mentioned the hadith, he mentioned and the bab. So Ibn Majah rahimahullah have a bab, abwab as-sunnah. So he mentioned his bab, babu al-ittiba al-sunnati al-khulafa al-rashidin al-mahdiyin. So Ibn Majah rahimahullah, that he can somewhat put this the title that he mentioned his hadith under this title, bab ittiba al-sunnah al-khulafa al-rashidin al-mahdiyin. Show the importance of following the ways of al-ittiba al-sunnah al-khulafa, following the ways of the khulafa al-rashidin. So it shows regarding the importance of sticking to the way and following the example of the khulafa al-rashidin. Then I mentioned the hadith Ibn Majah rahimahullah, he mentioned it, فقال قام فينا رسول الله عليه السلام ذات يوم وعدنا موعظة بليغة وجدت منها القلوب وظفرت منها العيون وقيل يا رسول الله وأتنا موعدة مودة أهدنا إلينا بأحد فقال عليكم بسنتي they mention وعليكم بتقوى الله. So the version of Ibn Majah, sort of in this hadith mention أوصيكم بتقوى الله. So they mention in this one عليكم بتقوى الله, which is generally same meaning. They mention والسمع والطاعة وإن أبد أبشي وسترون. They mention وسترون. Now so a slight difference. بادي اختلافا شديدا. So Ibn Majah Rahimah mentioned اختلاف not كثيرة. He mentioned شديدة. Nam. So he mentioned that severe, intense differences. Then he mentioned فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين عضوا عليها بنواجذ وإياكم ومحدثات الأمور وإن كل بدعة ضلالة. Now, so you find a slight difference. I said some of those words can give more clarity to others. Regarding some give more clarity to others. They find that Ibn Hibban or Al-Hakim rahimahullah kind of somewhat is even a version. He gives many versions. Nam, that of the version he mentioned of hadith, that of the version that is mentioned by Al-Hakim in his Al-Hakim in his book Al-Mustadrak, he mentioned قال يعني concerned that he mentioned قال the Prophet his statement is the first that he mentioned قد تركتكم آل بيضاء ليلها كالنهار لا يزيغ عنها بعدي إلا هالك ومن يعيش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بما عرفتم من سنتي. So again, difference in wording. Again, that he mentioned, so the hadith before they mentioned that before he says أوصيكم بتقوى الله, in this one it doesn't mention قد تركتكم آل بيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها بادي إلا هالك ومن يعيش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بما عرفتم من سنتي. ما بما عرفتم من سنتي, what you know from my sunnah. So to what you know clear from my sunnah وسنة الخلفاء المهديين الراشدين من بعدي عليكم بالطاعة. So in this one الطاعة it comes later on. عليكم بالطاعة وإن أبد أبشيا عضوا عليها بالنواجد. So you'll find that slight difference. And also he mentioned فكان أسد ابن وداع يزيد في هذا حديث. And also one of the narrators he added in the hadith, which at the end that he mentioned فإن المؤمن كالجمل أنف حيثما قيد أنقاد. So he mentioned that the extra wording is mentioned also at the end of the hadith at the front. At the beginning of the hadith you have some extra wording which is تركتكم على بيضاء. And at the end also of the hadith, they have some additional wording where he mentioned فَإِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنَ كَالْجَمَلَ الْأَنْفِ. Where the concern, the mu'min is like a camel that has that thing in his nose. Nam, where he is guided. And the Muslim, he goes accordingly. The nose a ring. So they mentioned that extra wording is da'if. That wording regarding the mu'min is like that of a camel. He can somewhat wherever he pulled, he goes. That wording is daif. But as for taraktukum or qad taraktukum ala bayda, there are the ulama Shaykh Albani and some of all the hadith and Hakim all that to be authentic. Of the thing to be mindful of, sometimes when people mention this hadith, they mention قد تركتكم على محجة البيضاء. قد تركتكم على محجة البيضاء. As for the word محجة البيضاء regarding this hadith, it is not authentic. It's just bayda without mahajjatul bayda. So that's concerning, I said, the hadith of different wordings. That of the hadith that it shows regarding concerning the salat that was being prayed then was Salatul Fajr. After Salat as-Subh, Salat al-Fajr. With the Prophet ﷺ that he mentioned these advice to those who were praying. So said that's the wording of the hadith. That's the general wording of the hadith. So find that this hadith is Nawawi rahimahullah somewhat of condensed the hadith. The next matter is the matter regarding the hukum upon the hadith. Is the hadith authentic or not? Is the hadith authentic or not? As for this matter, you find a khilaf between the ulama or a difference between the ulama on their ruling on the hadith. So even the hadith is said mashhur, well known. But as for the aqwal of the ulama regarding this hadith, of the aqwal that they have mentioned, that at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, as he mentioned, hadithun, as he mentioned, hasanul sahih. So of those who authenticate hadith, amongst them at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah. And he passed a judgment on a hadith after mentioning it. So said of the benefit of the book of Tirmidhi rahimahullah, which is al-Jami' or called Sunnah at-Tirmidhi, that after he mentioned hadith, he will give his judgment. He will pass a judgment on the hadith. So it's not in mention hadith of Tirmidhi rahimahullah, it's good to know what his judgment is on the hadith. Also, others was discuss the hadith and pass a judgment. We have al-Bazzar. So al-Bazzar, as it has been narrated upon him by Ibn Abdul Bar. So Ibn Abdul Bar rahimahullah, that he has stated that al-Bazzar قال هذا hadith ثابت صحيح. So al-Bazzar, of those who authenticate this hadith. Also Ibn Abdul Bar rahimahullah, of those who authenticate the hadith, by he mentioned قال Ibn Abdul Bar هو كما قال له al-Bazzar rahimahullah hadith or hadith al-Irbad hadith ثابت. So he mentioned to note the hadith of Irbad, it is ثابت. So that's Ibn Abdul Bar. Also al-Baghawi in his book Sharh al-Sunnah. So al-Baghawi in his book Sharh al-Sunnah, also all the hadith is that هذا hadith حسن, or the hadith to be Hasan. And also of those famous, of those concerning Ibn Malakkin, also in his book Al-Badr Al-Munir. So regarding ahadith, already it's ahkam al-halal al-haram, one of the of those who have checked like concerning ahadith of the Shafi'iyah. So the books that one of the main books of the Shafi'iyah regarding fiqh, Ibn Abdul Bar rahimahullah went to that book, taking all the hadith that are used in the book, and he kind of somewhat went through them, critiqued them. Ibn Malakkin. So he went to one of the books of the main books of the Shafi'iyah, Al-Rafi'i, where he checked all the hadith in that book, or discussed those hadith. So the book is called Al-Badr Al-Munir. The book is in print, where he mentioned هذا حديث صحيح. He said هذا حديث صحيح. هذا حديث صحيح. That this hadith is authentic. So Ibn Al-Malakkin authenticate hadith. Also we mentioned Al-Hakim. So Al-Hakim also authenticate hadith. He mentioned that قال هذا حديث صحيح ليس له علة. هذا حديث صحيح ليس له علة. But then he mentioned a hadith ala shart al-Bukhari al-Muslim, and al-Dhahb rahimullah kind of somewhat mentioned that's not the case. So al-Hakim rahimullah, he kind of mentioned the hadith also is in line with the condition of Bukhari al-Muslim, right? But they mentioned that's not the case. As stated by al-Hakim, the hadith is not in accordance to the condition of Bukhari or to the standard of Bukhari and Muslim regarding the level of authenticity. So I said those are of the ulama who authenticate the hadith. In the more contemporary, we can add Ibn Taymiyyah in his book Al-Iqtida, Sirat al-Mustaqim also, all the hadith to be authentic. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, also all the hadith to be mentioned, hadithun rijaluhu sahih, or the hadith. So Ibn al-Hajar al-Asqalani, also al-Shawkani. So those of the ulama, Albani and the likes, that they authenticate this hadith. So of the thing that were mentioned, so that's concerned of those who said authentic hadith. So of the likes of At-Tirmidhi, Bazzar, Ibn Abdul Bar, Al-Baghawi, Ibn Malakkin, Al-Hakim, Al-Dhahabi, also Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Hajar, Shawkani, Albani, and the likes of authentic hadith. We have those who have critiqued the hadith by saying the hadith is that they all the hadith to be daif. And of them are famous of the ulama of hadith. They mention Al-Hafiz Abu al-Hasan Ibn Qattan. So Ibn Qattan, that he has a book that is called Al-Bayan Al-Wahm Wal-Iyaham, where he discusses hadith and can somewhat come to the conclusion that he mentioned regarding concern the hadith is daif due to certain narrators in the hadith that I said that they are unknown, or some critique of those narrators. Of them they mention Hujr ibn Hujr, that La Yaraf is not known, and also Abdul Rahman ibn Amr al-Sulami. So those narrators, that they are not per se well known. They call them majhul. They're not well known or known. So there's some we said they mentioned some weakness in those narrators. So based upon this, the all hadith laysa bisahih. So Ibn Qattan, all hadith is to be daif due to those factors of some of the narrators in hadith that they are not known. Nam. So you have that discussion between the ulama regarding concerning that hadith, but also the overall majority of the ulama that they are of the position the hadith is authentic. Based upon said the majmu', so yes, those factors are there regarding some of the narrators that they are unknown, and also some inqita, some breaks in some of the isnad, but overall with all those isnad, all those chains, that hadith that they added together, they become authentic. So the hadith all put together with the various isnad that they strengthen, even the ones that have some weakness, that they're able to strengthen each other and raise the hadith to a level of maqbool. So the hadith, overall a final judgment of hadith, as many have mentioned, of in line with those, so the hadith is authentic. So the correct, so the hadith is considered to be authentic. So as we mentioned that to the end of the hadith, so the start of the hadith you have some extra wording, and also the end of the hadith, this hadith, that there's some word that he left that is not mentioned. We mentioned what is mentioned at the end of the hadith, that mentioned in al-mu'min, that indeed a believer is that of a camel with a ring in his nose. He goes wherever he is directed. That he mentioned that wording is da'if, as mentioned by Ibn Rajab, that he mentioned regarding that فَقَدْ أَنْكَرَ الطَّائِفَ مِنَ الْحُفَّاظِ هذا الزيادة في آخر hadith, that what have come at the end of the hadith, that these extra wording at the end of the hadith, that min of the uffaz, the ulama of hadith, that they all had to be da'if, and some mentioned is mudraj. So that's concerning the hadith that have been mentioned. Hey, wanna come? That's the next point. Hey, so that's concerning discussing the hadith regarding what have been mentioned regarding the authenticity of the hadith, or what have been said by the ulama regarding the hadith. So as for the narrator of the hadith, the rawi of the hadith was Irbad ibn Sariyah. So al-Irbad, sometimes with alif or lam. So in most cases alif or lam, al-Irbad ibn Sariyah. But some may remove alif or lam, Irbad ibn Sariyah as-Sulami, and he's from Bani Sulaim ibn Mansur. So Irbad ibn Sariyah min Bani Sulaim ibn Mansur. And the word Irbad, it means concerning that Tawil min an-nas. It means Irbad mean a person who's tall. That mean a tall person. Tall person. Hey, time for that.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
So we said that regarding concern the Rawi of the hadith, who is Irbad ibn Sariyah, they mentioned regarding concerning that, kana min ahli sufa, so of those who like lived in the masjid, so of those who like reside in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ during that time, and they were like some of the fuqara, some of the fuqara from the Sahaba. So of those who live in the masjid, so at night they will kind of somewhat, they'll sleep inside of the masjid at the nights, that they'll stay inside of the masjid. So he was from amongst those, that group. Then also regarding his kunya, that he mentioned, that I was mentioned that the system of An-Nawawi rahimahullah, that he followed regarding that every time, whenever he mentioned a Sahabi, for the first time he'll mention him by full name and also his kunya. So he mentioned his, is kunya, Abu Najih. Abu Najih, that is kunya. The next matter regarding Islamuhu, as for Islam, when he accepted Islam, that he of the one who are early ones to accept Islam. So Al-Irbad ibn Sariya, of the early ones to accept Islam, we mentioned that they discussed regarding that he was of the fourth amongst those to accept Islam. So of the early ones, whether he was the fourth or Amr ibn Abasa, whether they were, which of them were the fourth to accept Islam, but the early ones to accept Islam. So Irbad ibn Sariya, amongst the early ones to accept Islam. Then as for the next matter regarding Irbad, regarding concerning that eventually he left and he resided in Sham, and they lived in the place of Al-Hims. So he lived in that area, and known to be like a person who was that dedicated to Ibadah. So of those concerning that, of Al-Abid. So like of those who dedicate himself to Ibadah, and of those who wept a lot. As for his wafat, as for his death, that I mentioned that Mata fi sana 75, that he died the year of the 75th year of the Hijrah, in the Khalifa, or in the Khilafah of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And it said during the time of so in the Caliphate of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And his hadith are found in Kutub as-Sunnah. That so yes, so that's concerning something brief regarding this particular Sahabi. So we stop here short hour and go to the next point. What time?
5 minutes.
In the next 5 minutes. So with next month, the time is changing. When the clock changes? At the end of the month?
Next week.
Okay, not next week, that's the week after. So in the next week, they will start earlier or after Salat al-Maghrib. We'll start after Salat al-Maghrib, rather than, or we start earlier. So either we'll start at 5, because we're starting at 5:30, but because Salat al-Maghrib now is today 6 o'clock, and then next week could be a bit more earlier. So either we just pray Salat al-Maghrib, then we start immediately after. Or we start earlier, which would be 5 o'clock. After Maghrib. Okay, so inshallah, so until maybe the clock changes.
The clock changes the day after. So the day after Saturday.
So for that next week,
So
for that next week, and not for next week, we'll just start after Maghrib. And then after, we'll just go back to the normal time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So inshallah, for this, we'll just stop here. Because we discuss concerning other matters. So this hadith will take some time. So bear in mind that this hadith is going to take some time. So based upon the hadith covers. So discuss concerning the hadith of what it covers, like is a maw'idah. So might discuss concerning what are those sifat of maybe of the dahi regarding giving maw'idah. Also matters regarding the importance of sunnah and sticking to the sunnah. Also matter regarding al-bidah. Also, he discussed concerning matter regarding ikhtilaf, regarding the reality the Muslim will divide. So that division amongst the Muslim, that sometimes that people try to kind of somewhat try to pretend it doesn't exist. So you have those who try to kind of somewhat pretend it doesn't exist, or they try to water down that there's real difference that have occurred between the Muslim. So that matter will be concerned those division and the split amongst the Muslim. It occurs regarding matters of aqadiyah, matters of belief, which is the core matter of the difference between the Muslim. So you have the names now. You have people that they are Ashari, some say that they are Maturidi, some people that they are Salafi, Athari, some people say that they are Diyobandi, Nashqabandi, Sufi. So these names come with an ittiqad. So those people, all of those words, it comes with a person of a particular understanding regarding Islam, especially regarding matters regarding belief. Now, are these things legitimate? Are these things significant differences or just minor matters? In reality, he said, so the reality is not minor matters. But sometimes people try to give give that understanding of something which is minor, which is not the case. So he said some of those things may be covered concerning some of those groups and what they hold and what the difference and the split. So asbab al-khilaf and also how to unified. So we might cover some of those things when we go through the hadith bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So he said things to come with this particular hadith. With that inshallah we end. Wa billahi ta'ala tawfiq.